Let's go. I'm Zach from Squadcast, and that was a great conversation. Tarek and Sarav, that was really great, and been really enjoying the event thus far. I think our community manager Ariel had a great conversation this morning. Earlier, it's morning for me. Sorry, I'm on the West Coast in California. She's on the East Coast. So I think she was talking about infrastructure, and I'm gonna go ahead and pull up my co-founder, Rock, and we'll get this presentation started. Good morning, Rock. How are you?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
So it looks like we're hosting this thing ourselves, huh?
Let's go.
All right, sweet. Ready to just get started then?
Yeah, let's go, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. Feel free to put those into the chat as we go, and we might answer them as we go. We might answer them in our content here today for you, or we can address anything that you want us to touch on once we wrap up.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone. Hello, Podlines. We really appreciate you joining us today. And big thank you to the Podlines team for giving us the opportunity to contribute. Like Zach said, it seems like this has been an awesome event, and appreciate the good work that you're doing to spread the word and awareness of podcasting. So today, I think the topic that we're going to talk about actually fits in pretty nicely with what the previous topic was talking about. We're going to dive a little bit deeper on some of those things on how to incorporate video into your podcast, specifically for like marketing and growing your show purposes. So if you're just getting started, I don't want you to feel like overwhelmed, like that you need to have a video presence to your show like right away. Like the previous presenter was talking about, like it's pretty difficult to just get started, but once you build up some momentum, build up those skills, inevitably the show begins to change, and growth becomes a bigger goal. So this is one of the things that we found with our ability to connect and engage with podcasters on a daily basis, and then also just paying attention to what's happening in the industry. So before we get started, we're going to talk about who we are. So Zach, if you don't mind, going to the next slide.
Yeah.
So cool. He's Zach, I'm Rock. We're the co-founders of Squadcast. And Zach, why don't you tell them what we do at Squadcast?
Yeah, we have the distinct privilege of serving thousands of creators all over the world in over 130 countries to record quality content in audio and video. And that's really for a couple things really matter to that. It's having a great experience as the creator, the host of these conversations, having a great experience for your guest who probably may or may not be a full-time or professional podcaster or content creator. So we need to make sure that everybody feels comfortable in that conversation and relationship. But that is all in service of providing your audience and your listeners with a great experience. So, we do that. We bring that to life with technology that we've developed and engineered and designed and listened to the podcast community to bring to life. And that is really with a cloud recording studio that empowers creators to connect, as I said, from anywhere in the world, to produce quality audio and video for everybody in that conversation, so that you can use that to create really awesome, high production value content for your audience to make the most of, to learn from, to hear those stories and take that in. So I think today's presentation, we're going to focus on video mostly, as Rock said, but you can, just to preface that, you can take everything we say and apply it to audio as well. And we'll even talk about how the strategy moves between those different mediums. And just to kind of zoom out and back up for a second, we got started not because we wanted to do a technology company. We wanted to do a science fiction audio drama podcast and use podcasting to express ourselves in a new creative way. Like, I remember thinking, like, man, if podcasting was a bookstore, it would be all nonfiction. And And then I heard Ars Paradoxica, and then I heard like Girl in Space, and was like, wow, there's like a whole other side to this coin. I want to tell some science fiction stories. But that was coming to life, but we quickly found that the technology that existed was not in service of content creators. The quality was lacking, the reliability was lacking, and it just became a bottleneck for our creativity. And consistency is really key for podcasters. So, getting an episode out on time is really, really critical. And when you're writing scripts and working with voice actors and nobody's in the same studio together, that can become a real challenge. And that's where we pivoted to build Squadcast, and been at that almost 5 years now, I'm proud to say. But there is some things that we've learned along the way from the creators that we serve. And there's a myth in there that we want to help. We want to help kind of unpack and provide some truth that we've picked up. And that is that video, a little counterintuitive. We think of podcasting as an audio medium, but we've learned and found in our own experience, validated, that video is and can be the biggest opportunity for you to grow your podcast, and how you can use audio and video strategically to engage with your audience wherever they are. And we're gonna unpack why we believe this is true, and provide tactics and strategy for you to apply and use your content to reach your audience wherever they're at.
So before we summarize what we're going to talk about today, I just want to thank you, Zach. I could feel you like holding back because you wanted to just get right into the content and start talking about it. So Always. Good job on holding some restraint there. But today we're going to first talk about, hey, why video? I'm a podcaster, and we get it. We were thinking the same thing when podcasters were asking us, like, hey, we love the high quality audio that we're getting from Squadcast, but we could really use the video recordings too. There was always a video component to Squadcast to really help facilitate a better conversation. But again, it wasn't intuitive to us, like why or how video fit into the podcaster's production workflow. And so we're going to start off with that. And then we're going to talk about YouTube specifically, just because YouTube is its own beast, for lack of a better word. And then we'll focus on use cases for social media. YouTube is kind of a social media platform, but again, it's like its own thing. So we're gonna focus on that separately. But then talking about how that differentiates from different tactics and strategies you can have for social media. And then please stick around to the end. We got some free stuff to give away. And then, like Zach mentioned, we always try to leave time for Q&A because we love hearing what you all are working on and what you all got on your mind, and we want to help. So without further ado, Zach, why video? I'm a freaking podcaster.
Well, I mentioned when we got started that the creator experience is super critical to having a flowing conversation, the guest experiences as well. But really, at the end of the day, why are you making something? It's to connect with other people. It's to share those stories, that message, grow an audience and your brand. And that's really, growth is the topic of our presentation today. And that really comes from like, okay, well, what am I looking to grow? I'm looking to grow my audience, right? You can think about it in terms of downloads. That's what tends to be talked about probably in some of the other presentations at this event. That's a great metric. Metrics are getting better. Applaud those companies for pushing that forward. We've had a bunch of conversations on our podcast between two mics along those lines. But really, we want to engage with more people. We want more people to find our content, right? And word of mouth is really awesome. That's the primary growth engine for podcasters. But when we look at how does we have the perspective of creators, right, looking to engage this audience, but let's flip that around. What does our audience think about our podcast, and how do they view us and our content that we're providing them? And this really comes to life through some research from Edison Research's Infinite Dial report, where they talked to and polled and had interviews with people who listen to podcasts, both like longtime listeners, new listeners, people who just learned what podcasting is and where to find it. This being early days, as our previous presenters mentioned, we have audiences along that whole spectrum. So the audience views our podcast not as like long form audio that's in an RSS feed that I can go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and subscribe and listen to. They view it as part of a show, part of a larger show with a capital S. And with listener habits evolving over time, like it gets thrown around a lot in tech presentations that like people's attention span is shrinking because of Twitter and other things. That's true, but we're also seeing other forms of evolution when it comes to how our audience and our communities are engaging with our content. So that's really where we can start to frame up, like, how does video fit into this with our long form audio content that we're working hard to create? How can we use video to learn from our listeners and engage with them where they are? So sometimes I'm in the car, I'm not going to watch video while I'm driving, right? So I'm going to choose audio in that use case. Sometimes I'm in the elevator and only have 10 seconds to watch this video clip. There's a whole bunch of things on that spectrum, and you can use your long form audio content and video, your interviews, to as strategic content to meet people where they are with whatever their consumption habits, listening or watching habits are. And we're seeing that evolve over time. And that was another kind of highlight from that Infinite Dial report. So they're viewing our podcast not as an island, they're viewing it as part of a show, right? So you can think of that as like your brand. In our case, Between Two Mics is a podcast. That's where it started. But we have, as Rock said, video recording on the Squadcast platform. So we're recording that as video as well. And we can put that on YouTube. We can slice that up and put that on social media. We can pull quotes and put those into images for Instagram and all over the different channels that we have to really meet our audience where they are. And their perspective of that is a show. So if I want to watch something, I should be able to find your show on YouTube. If I want to listen to something right now while I'm in the car, I should be able to find that on my Spotify. So this all represents a huge opportunity to grow. Not just grow with the number of people that you're reaching, but grow with the number of impressions that you are making on your audience that are already subscribed and engaging with your content. And that really all adds up to choice, right? The audience that you are working to engage, they want to choose where to engage with your content. And if you only give them the RSS feed in like Apple Podcasts, but maybe you haven't submit to Spotify, I don't know why, that's a terrible example, but like if you don't have an Instagram or you don't have a website, like you don't have a YouTube channel, these are all opportunities to give your audience the choice of where to engage with you. And that's really where we can, as podcasters, use video, not to become the next like YouTube star, although that's cool if that's what you want, but like you can use it to further enhance your position as a podcaster to provide value to your audience, which at the end of the day, that's what we're doing here. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think the theme for that, Zach, is like just go to where your audience is and build that relationship up. And then once you do, like maybe they will actually listen to the podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, assuming that you publish there.
Yeah, and I have some examples of my own like kind of consumption media diet here that I'll share in a little bit.
All right. Yeah, so focusing on YouTube now, the theme is search and funnels. And like Zach said, we're big fans of Edison Research and the Infinite Dial report. It's like it's like the gold standard when it comes to like media consumption behaviors and trends. And one of the things that they pointed out is that a growing number of audiences are discovering shows through YouTube. There's like this new breed of listener for podcasting, if you will. And those folks are coming to the space much differently than I guess I hesitate to call myself an early adopter, but I mean, we've been listening to podcasts now for over a decade, right, Zach? So,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And typically people like Zach and I, who have been listening to podcasts for over a decade now, would come for educational purposes or they want to learn more about a specific topic that you can't find anywhere else. It's not on, regular TV or radio. Only a podcasting can go that deep and specific and niche. And that's absolutely why I started listening to podcasts and what I do love about podcasts. However, according to Edison Research, there is a new listener type, and those folks, they don't necessarily want to learn something new. They almost want to just be entertained and escape. And so a lot of times they are on YouTube looking for that entertainment or escape. And as some of you may already know, YouTube is the second most used search engine behind Google. It's more of like a how-to search engine, but you're going to want to have more than just audio or a still image. I think this probably seems obvious, but data does show that like video content is engaged more with. And I bring that up, and again, it might seem obvious now, but back when Zach and I were first starting Squadcast and engaging with podcasters in our local communities here in the Bay Area, this was already being talked about as having a presence on YouTube, but it was really an SEO play. So it was basically just like having the full length audio version of your podcast and like a blank image or maybe some image, but not very engaging at all. We're not talking about that anymore. I don't think that's going to cut it anymore. And so what a lot of podcasters are finding out is that YouTube is a way to find these newer audiences that normally aren't looking for shows on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And my personal favorite use case for this, and this goes into the funnels part of this search and funnels theme, is using like short clips. Like you take the full podcast episode, and sure, that's great to have on in its full entirety on YouTube. But what I've seen that I think it works really well is chopping that up into like highlights or short clips of that podcast. And what I like about that is that I don't have to dedicate 1 hour, 2 hours, however long the podcast is, to kind of get a feel for what's going on, especially if it's like a newer podcaster, a newer guest. I get a way of like consuming that content for 5-10 minutes and then I can figure out like, okay, do I want to listen to more, or there's other clips and I can keep listening to that. Pretty soon, if I've listened to like 2 or 3 clips, it's like, okay, I should probably just listen to this full episode. This sounds like this is going to be, pretty awesome. But for me, I think that's what's worked so effectively, is that's built up the relationship as a listener with these different creators. And I think that's a good strategic use for YouTube, just because the average listening time on a YouTube video is much shorter. And going back to what you said, Zach, about attention span, and the data shows this, like, I think if you can get someone to watch your video for like 2 minutes or 3 minutes, like you've won. Like that's a huge deal. Whereas with a podcast, you can expect someone that presses play to your podcast to listen to about 75-80% of that show. And this is rooted in data, so it's pretty interesting. And again, it's about being strategic. Like there is a different use case, there's different behaviors on YouTube. So you want to keep that in mind when you start to implement these video clips. Or you don't have to do the video clips. That's just a great example that I've seen. And then another thing that I don't think is commonly discussed, but I get it because it can be a little bit of a toxic place, is how powerful the comment section can be, especially for the creators to engage with their viewers, listeners, whatever you want to call them on YouTube. Like podcast apps, I mean, some of them probably do, but like the main podcast apps, there's no like comment feature. And I do think that that's, I think for the larger shows like Joe Rogan, it is a little bit more of a toxic place. But for these independent creators, you'll see those folks engaging with their audiences. And I think that's an awesome thing that's not really talked about enough. And it does kind of get into the social media element of YouTube. And that's really the benefits that we see of social media is engagement. Anything you want to touch on YouTube, Zach, before we move over to the social media side?
Just like you, I know that I love the host. I know that I love this show already. But because that host is working to bring on guests that fit their show, but I haven't heard of, these topical clips, like one question and answer is like equals one clip. So you can think of a full long form interview as creating that, of course, but also several clips as you go, each one of those questions and answers. And because I've never heard of, like, in my case, like this astrophysicist who has heard of these people, right? But I trust the host. These topical clips that are a less of a time investment on my part and as a member of the audience, it's a more minimal investment on my part to say, okay, is this person interesting to me? I can kind of get to know them a little bit, to dabble a little, and I trust the host. So there's already a pretty good chance that, you know, that's why I subscribed on YouTube. But like to invest right out the gate and based off of like a title and a description or show notes, to invest like 3 hours to listen or watch this long form conversation, that's a heavy lift. Right. Time is limited for all of us, even when it is valuable information that's being gained. So these topical clips are like, to what you're mentioned about funnels, they can kind of give me an easier time investment to inform my greater decision to say, yeah, I'm going to watch this 3 hour long interview over the course of this week. And that's probably all I have time to watch. So I think that's a really powerful tool in the tool belt of podcasters and content creators. And I've seen this work a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I find interesting is like, even if it is two talking heads, sometimes I want to watch that. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do. And I think a lot of viewers, listeners, whatever, they fall all over the spectrum. And so it's just about expanding your reach, being where these new audiences are, building that relationship, and then and then they'll listen to your show one way or another.
Yeah, exactly. And this is you could think of this kind of as like the middle of the funnel, but let's talk about the top of the funnel when it comes to the broader landscape of social media. And just to preface this slide, we're not going to talk about how to promote your content with like advertisements. There's probably another presentation that's going to do that more justice than we are today. But what we want to touch on is purely focused on organic growth through social media. So you can think of the podcast as and the long form content as like the bottom of that funnel. That's the highest value long form content. You can think of the topical clips and the long form content as like the middle of the funnel on YouTube. And then you can think of the top of the funnel. If let's say that 10-minute long conversation, I don't even have that much time. I'm in an elevator and I got to get this person to become, you know, a member of my audience. So how do I do that? Social media is a great way to do so. And as I said earlier, the word of mouth, thankfully, I think it's beautiful that is still the number one way that people discover podcasts. So tell your friends if you like a show that's engaging with you. That's awesome. Let's keep that going as a community. But what has emerged is social media has become the second most popular way that people are discovering podcasts. And to pause there, it's kind of the same thing, right? One's just kind of IRL, one's like online. So still word of mouth as a broad umbrella, but it's through social media. And what we can do is make that easier for our audience to share and distribute and spread the growth of the episode or the content that they love that you help create. So as you said, Rock, videos, they engage more. Like there's a reason that social media platforms have invested so heavily in the infrastructure needed to share all of these videos, right? On Facebook and TikTok and Instagram, right? There's a reason that these videos autoplay. There's a reason that, you know, they catch your attention. It's because out of all the different forms of content, text or images or audio and video, video has the most dense information for you to consume. You're getting the audio, but it's additive to also see the imagery that is presented therein. And, you know, we have things like audiograms and really love the teams at Headliner and Wave for pushing that forward to repurpose your content. So if you just have audio, you can still create videos. That's amazing. Not knocking that at all. But if you have the video of that will engage more, is really what we're trying to say. So just kind of give you some options there to engage on social media content for bite-sized topical clips. So to make this a little more concrete, you can just pull like the most powerful quote from your guest of the episode, or maybe there's a couple different quotes that you can pull out of there that you think will really engage with your audience and people on social media. Maybe it's this quote will really go far, travel far with this hashtag, right? You can start to kind of think of it like that. And that's really what's going to give you further reach and travel per post is thinking about your content and where to slice those up into bite-sized chunks, with audiograms, video, images of the quote, right? You can create a plethora of content with your source material that's recorded in studio quality audio and video. You have that flexibility to create a bunch of content. And then being on social media, you can use things like hashtags or Facebook groups or subreddits or, whatever you're into on social media, to reach more people. So if you have a podcast that's about this topic, like let's stick to my contrived example of astrophysics, right? Like you can share that in a community of podcasters and that will do well. But if you go to a community of astrophysicists and share it there, it will reach farther, right? Though that is the audience that is kind of primed for the content that you're working hard to create. And those are your potential audience members. So that is really awesome way to grow. And because it's Facebook, you can make it easy for them to share it beyond that community, beyond that group, and encourage that in the post. Like, hey, I'm working to reach more people with this valuable content. Like, please share that. Share that. Tag me if you have a different quote that you like from it. Go for it. And that is something that is really enhanced by the shareability on social. And then I mentioned communities. So finding those communities that already exist, starting your own, and fostering an ongoing conversation. Who should I talk to next, right? What questions should I ask my next guest? These are all things that you can engage with your audience to make that next episode more valuable. Give them a shout out in there. And if they hear their name, like they're a super fan for you. And then encourage inside those communities, they can be silos. So encourage those people that you've worked hard to foster that conversation with inside your community. Make it easy for them to share it outside of the community, or ask them, hey, where else should we go and find people? There's definitely opportunities and ideas that they have there.
Yeah. And just to wrap up on the social media part, like we talked about word of mouth being the number one way shows are discovered, which totally makes sense. Cause like someone that you trust is telling you, Zach, you got to listen to the show. It's about this amazing astrophysicist. You're more likely to do that than, just like it being randomly discovered, I suppose, unless you were searching for it. But I think when social media becomes word of mouth, when it is shared from a friend, if I share it on social media with you, like that's almost the same thing. It's just a more, like you said, digital version of the word of mouth thing.
Right. Rather than me having to like pull out my phone and say, hey, listen to this clip or something, like I'm already there. I already have headphones. Like I can just like quickly start to engage with it. And it's like, that person may not be like a mega influencer with millions of followers and stuff. And that's not where I'm gaining my trust. But I did grow up with this person. I trust what they think. We're into similar stuff, so there's like there's kind of an influence through that relationship that is something that is rooted in trust. And I think that's pretty great that we can help each other find great content, whether that's, the next show on Netflix, whether that's the next podcast, maybe it's the next Netflix podcast. I don't know. So yeah, anything else you wanted to add, Rock, on the topic of social?
All right. So to recap what we talked about, we first started off with why video. You're a podcaster, and it's all about considering your audience and really just expanding your reach and going to where folks are that are going to discover, that are looking for shows. And then we also talked about searches and funnels and how to, different tactics and strategies you can use on YouTube, and how YouTube is this, incredible place where shows are getting discovered now more and more every day. And then Zach just touched on the organic shareability on social media to kind of make that digital word of mouth. All right. So we promised them free stuff, Zach. So should we just get to that?
Yeah. Yeah, and at Squadcast, we want to help you in every way possible connect with people around the world and record that content in the source quality, in the highest quality, so that way you can utilize that to build out your funnel and grow your audience. To have that highly valuable long form content in audio video, but also to have to not necessarily be in a position to repurpose the audio into some other format, but to have that other format in video to share and engage with people in the ways that we've shared with topical clips on YouTube, with more bite-sized quotes and images and sharing on social. Like, you can apply all of these things to your podcast and really go beyond the long form audio content you're working to create with audio and video on the Squadcast platform. So we'd love to help you with that. We'd love for you to try that out. We have a 7-day free trial, but to make that even more valuable, we have a 1 month free with the promo code Podlines21. You can punch that in when you sign up and get started there to record that audio and video. And thank you again to the Podlines team and everybody who's been engaging with this event. It's been awesome so far. We're grateful for being able to contribute. We love the podcast community, and I am happy to take questions if we have any more time. But I think we might have run a little bit over, so see if we have some time for questions.
Yeah, and I don't see any coming in on the chat. Someone says thank you. And you're welcome. It's our pleasure.
Thank you.
I do see something in the Q&A. It looks like it might have been asked in a previous session, but I think it's so important. I just want to cover it. This individual says, could you speak more about the process of starting a podcast? You mentioned that it's not easy, although it's widely presented as an easy thing to do, which they disagree with. So I love this because I think we talk about podcasting having a low barrier to entry, and I think that's absolutely true, and it's a wonderful thing. However, I think when folks hear that, they equate that to, oh, it's easy, and that's not true. It is not easy to create engaging content and consistently deliver that to an audience that you're also growing. Like that's difficult. I mean, there's technology like Squadcast, like Zencaster. All of us are trying to help you all focus on just creating the content, but that by itself is a difficult job. There's a lot of hats to wear, jobs to be done. So I do think it's important to understand that, and I'm not trying to discourage anybody from starting a podcast. I do think it is important though to be realistic and set realistic expectations. And just because it's pretty easy to use the technology, like I mentioned before, buy a microphone, headphones, all that stuff, it's creating the content that is really difficult.
Yeah, and just to add to that, like you said, Rock, I think for me, where it becomes the challenge really gets real, the rubber hits the road, is the consistency. Like, we all have stuff going on, right? Like, I think it's one of the other presenters here with the School of Podcasting, Dave Jackson, says, cool, you're going to start a podcast. What are you going to give up? And this energy to produce this podcast has to come from somewhere. So either you have space where you can use your podcast, use that time to produce your podcast, or you make it, you find it somewhere else. Right. And it's a lot like doing a startup or doing a small business in a lot of ways. Your product is your audio and video. You're working to grow an audience, and there's a number of parallels that we touch on our podcast, Between Two Mics, where we can apply lessons that we've learned across our journey as founding Squadcast to the podcast landscape for independent podcasters looking to grow, to maybe be professional and part of a network and all of those things. We're seeing a lot of professionalization in podcasting, and that's amazing. But those people work very hard to produce their content consistently at a high quality, working to have those engaging conversations and deliver those over time.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, it's not like starting a startup. Like, you are your own micro media company,
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the part of being a creator. You're artist, but there's this business side as well that you got to keep in mind. So we do have a question from Aladdin. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. No, it's cool. I just want to make sure Aladdin gets the question answered. He asked you, Zach, give us some tips on repurposing our podcast.
Yeah. So repurposing tends to be like, I have audio, I'm starting with audio, and I want to get it into some other format. So I could, like, let's say, transcribe that into text. That's another format. I can use that for my show notes or my blog or accessibility with the transcripts. That's awesome. You should do those things. And you could also create audiograms from your audio that would produce a video version of it with kind of some captioning, with the waveform, with some graphics. You could take the most impactful quote of your guest from that transcript and make an image with that on it, and like highlight your guest. Our mentor and advisor, Harry Duran, is always talking about treating your guests like gold. Put them on that pedestal and highlight their amazing words in images, in audiograms, in text, and you have that long form content in audio and in video. Create clips, create videos on TikTok, and all of the things that you can do to maximize and really expand out from that source content that you have of audio and video, and make it accessible in all of these different formats. That way, wherever your audience is, they can choose to engage with you on Instagram or YouTube or your podcast, and all of these things fit together cohesively under a brand. And that is kind of how I think about repurposing. And there's a number of tools that you can use to do that. I mentioned Headliner and Wave. They help with audiograms. Descript or like Temi are great for transcription. Squadcast will help you record that source content in audio and video for anybody in the world. So you can connect with like 10 people if that's a lot, but you can connect with as many people as you like and record those individual speakers. That gives you a lot of optionality when it comes to your post-production workflow to make very valuable content for your audience to engage with the choice of wherever they're viewing you and your show. So anything else you wanted to add for Aladdin's question on repurposing, Rock?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. Thank you. Thanks for the question, Aladdin. And Aladdin says thanks.
Thank you.
So that's all the questions that I see rolling in. So I think that's it.
All right, cool. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you again for letting us share and engage and contribute to this conversation at Podlines. And check out the other check out our Squadcast booth. I believe Ariel is in there. Check out the replay if you jumped in midway of our presentation, and feel free to hit us up at squadcast.fm, and we'd be happy to help you with your show. You got a promo code on screen for making that easy to jump in. And if you're going to be at Podcast Movement, our team will be there as well. So looking forward to continuing to invest and engage with the community that we love being a part of.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.